Great. Good morning. So wonderful to be with this group again. I know that we'll be joined by a few more folks, so we'll give it half a beat for people to join. If you haven't had a chance to yet, please put in your rename yourself with your name and your preferred pronouns. We'd love to have that. If you can, go ahead and just put in the chat who you are, your pronouns, and your organizational affiliation, so folks know who is here. And if you can just start to bring that in the chat, name, affiliation, pronouns, that gives us a chance to connect as well. And thank you, Adam. Thank you, Lisa. I see folks put in there. Thank you, Barbara. Thank you, Lisa again, FIFA, Andrea, Samantha. They're going faster than I can say them, so that's good. Keep going. Get them in the chat. You know that this meeting is being recorded, which is great. Please make sure that your microphones are on mute so that we can cut down the background noise. And please make sure that you use the chat for comments and questions. If anybody is new to Zoom or just haven't used it very often, the controls you need are in the bottom left-hand corner of your screen. Allows you to turn on and off your microphone, as well as turn on and off your camera. Again, if you can or are able to, please have your camera on. It helps to make this a very human space. And then in the middle is your chat, where you can go ahead and add, as we've been asking folks to do, your pronouns and your introduction. So I'm going to ask folks to do a little exercise with me. Just if you can, turn on your cameras and go on the screen. I want you to put your hands up like this. Okay, let's see, you can, all right. And then I want you to put them together and then raise your elbows as high as you can. Raise your elbows as high as you can. Stretch your hands up all the way to the top. All right, and then bring it down again. Bring it down again. All right. And now I want you to interlace your fingers. Interlace your fingers. All right. And then I want you to flap them like this. There you go. All right. All right. I told my colleagues that I could get people to do this on screen, and it worked. Thank you. All right. Wonderful. Great. We're all here. Thank you for joining us for our meeting. We are, if we could go back to the first slide. Thank you. So this is working group meeting number 2 of the early childhood agenda. Just want to make sure folks are in the right meeting. And forward one slide. We've done our kind of welcome and a little bit of fun. Folks who are just getting here, just make sure you put your name, pronouns, and organization affiliation in the chat. It is really great to see everyone, and it's been a really powerful conversation. Raise your hand if you've been on Basecamp. Good stuff. And if you are joining us without your camera, you can use the emojis to put up a thumbs up if you've been on Basecamp. Those of you who are joining us without your camera on, wonderful. Good. Seeing some thumbs up there. Wonderful. Good. All right. Good. It's a very powerful tool, and it gives us some really interesting ways for us to participate. So I'm going to thank you here, and I'm passing on because we're going to do a word cloud activity, and then a little bit of review of our of the work we've been doing, and then we'll be going into our small groups. But for now, I'm going to turn this over to Jenna. Is that right, Jenna?
Yes. And then I am going to screen share. So we are going to do a word cloud today. We're just curious, how is everyone feeling about the agenda so far? We can pop the link into the chat, or you can use your phone to scan the QR code. We're looking for a one-word response, but you can respond multiple times. How is everyone feeling about the agenda so far?
So Jenna, you just put the phone up to the screen and then click on where your camera mouse is over the QR code, and you click on that, and then it takes you to the link. Is that right?
Yes.
Wonderful. All right, doing that now. Let's see what happens. Awesome. All right, it's taking me to the Menti. I'm going to enter my word. You all should do the same.
All right, I just threw the link in the chat again too. And now I'm going to pull up everyone's responses. Seeing a lot of excited, hopeful. Collaborative, good, energized, unsure, interested, intrigued, confused,
Validating.
empowered, validating, scattered. This is super helpful. Keep them coming. Can throw it in the chat one more. Whoops. Throw it in the chat one more time for.
So all you have to do is click on the link and then just put one word. Optimistic, we see. Great. Not actionable. Flow. Okay. Lots.
And if folks are not familiar with what a word cloud does, it aggregates those words, and the size of the words on the page are the words that have been repeated the most. And so what you're seeing here is a lot of folks are excited and hopeful.
Yeah, okay, I'll put the link in in the chat, and then you just click on the link and then you can add a word. And we're still welcoming folks in. So if you are just joining us, welcome to the second working group of the Early Childhood Agenda. We are working on a word cloud right now to get some real-time feedback about how you're feeling so far about the agenda.
All right, that looks like a really powerful set of responses there, still growing. Let's go ahead and folks can keep adding if they want. We just want to move forward in the agenda. I mentioned earlier today that that we are very excited about how many folks have logged on to Basecamp and have been engaged and involved in Basecamp and what's been used there. I'm going to pass over to Marissa to talk a little bit about how we're doing with it.
Thanks, Mo. So I'm going to just tee this up and then hand it over to Jenna, who can go through some of the specifics. But over the past week, sorry, Jenna, you can go back to the vision slide. Over the past week or so, we've been sort of continuing to iterate, continuing to develop shared language together. So we presented initial versions of this language during the last meeting, and then between our meeting on October 25th and the meeting today, we've really been engaging over Basecamp to get some more feedback on the language, to start to develop new drafts, to even share more language that we hadn't developed at the last meeting. So we'll continue that sort of a structure where we'll begin conversations at the working group, we'll bring them to Basecamp afterwards, and then we'll continue to develop language together on that tool. And Jenna's going to run through what we have in terms of finalized language at this point. And then I'm going to go through some specifics related to Basecamp, just wanting to talk through a little bit the notification settings and where you can find meeting events and dates and such. So I will turn it over to Jenna.
Thank you, Marissa. I'm just going to run through, if you remember, we asked for some feedback, some input on our vision statement. This is our collective vision statement. And we also asked for feedback on the values, the principles, and the guidelines. So I will run through those. For our vision statement, we got a lot of great suggestions and input. And I think you'll see that once we break up into our breakout room working groups, you'll see that each working group has their own, vision for how they want to define healthy beginnings, financially secure families, etc. And this is kind of the collective guiding our work and giving purpose and direction to our work. So we've tried to incorporate the things that you've shared with us. So our vision statement, the revised one now, is the early childhood agenda imagines, prioritizes, and builds collective action around equitable and impact-driven solutions by identifying barriers that impact children and families, having access to opportunities that foster healthy beginnings and high-quality experiences for young children, encourages families to be financially secure, and connects them to a robust system infrastructure and partnerships at the state and local level, so that all young children, families, the early childhood workforce, and the economy may thrive, thus moving policy changes into meaningful practices. So you can see that of the 5 working groups, we have incorporated each team into this collective vision statement. And we did really, I know that I saw a lot of the comments in Basecamp around really collaborating together to both identify barriers, setting priorities, and really reimagining the system and making meaningful and transformative change. And then, so the same goes for our values. We took your feedback and tried to group them. So our values guide the work of the early childhood agenda and give us purpose and direction. So we talked about evidence-based solutions. And I think some of the key words here are that we're looking for solutions that are not only evidence-based, but are collective. We're working together to move towards collective solutions. They are systemic. We want them to be sustainable, action-oriented, and data-informed. And then we talked a lot about advancing diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging. So this is in our process together, as well as what we want to see in the outcomes that we hope to achieve through our work together. And then engaging and centering voices, same thing. We want to hold space to empower the voices in our early child community so that we can work towards outcomes that also empower the voices of our community. And in doing so, we want to leverage strengths. We know that we have a lot of people here at the table, and we want to keep continuing in this continuous improvement process to get more voices at the table and leverage those strengths, because everybody brings their own content expertise, knowledge, connections, and lived experiences. And professionalization. I know we talked a lot about wanting to professionalize the early childhood workforce so that we are driving towards meaningful change. And then these are the guiding principles of EC 101. We got a lot of feedback on these through Basecamp as well. They were also in our video, so I won't read them, but they are here for you to review. And then these are the guidelines. We also have this slide when we go into our breakout groups with our working groups. We'll review these guidelines when we review the group map activity and each of the challenges that we have identified. So these are the questions, and we're going to go into more detail with them in our activity coming up. So with that, I'm going to pass it back over to you, Marissa.
Thanks, Jenna. All right, so I have 2 slides here that really are just highlighting 2 very specific things in Basecamp that I thought might be helpful in terms of technical assistance. So the first thing I will say is that if you have not received an invitation to join Basecamp yet, please let us know in the chat so that we can make sure that you get an invitation and can get into your account. So what we have here is the scheduling page. So when you log into Basecamp, there's a home screen that has the 4 different components of our account. So the schedule is one of them. We have documents and files, a to-dos section, and then the message board. So when you click on schedule, it brings you to this page and it shows you all of the events that we have related to the early childhood agenda. If you were to scroll down a little bit on this page, it'll list them out specifically. So you could, for example, click on the event for today. And then once you click on it, it has all the Zoom information. So it's one place where no matter what, you can always find the Zoom information. The really important thing I wanted to share here is that that blue link that's right under the word schedule, sort of above the calendar, says add the schedule to your Google Calendar, Outlook, or iCalendar. We know that that's a hugely helpful tool for a lot of us who have so many meetings throughout the day. So I just wanted to highlight that if you want to add this to your own personal calendar, you can click on that blue link and it'll add all of the meetings and Zoom information into your personal calendars. All right, and then for this slide, we've been so excited about all the engagement and the feedback and the conversation that's been happening on Basecamp throughout the past week. And we wanted to acknowledge that as the conversation sort of heats up and continues to evolve, with this many people that are involved in this project, notifications can kind of become a bit unruly. So I wanted to highlight that when you're in Basecamp, if you click on your account sort of bubble, it's normally where your name is or your face in the right-hand corner, it brings you to a settings page for notifications. And you can click on the notifications setting and you can decide what you want to receive and how you want to receive it. So as an example, I've selected here that I only want to be notified when someone specifically is like addressing me in the account. And I want that to be received over email notification rather than a pop-up on my Basecamp application. So these are settings that you all have access to, and you can sort of decide what you want to receive responses about. And then the benefit is that whenever you log into Basecamp, you'll have access to everything. You can read through the messages that you might have missed or read through the to-dos, but you won't have so many notifications in your email. So just 2 quick things about Basecamp there. And if there are any questions related to Basecamp, feel free to put them in the chat as well, and we can take a look at that and then post them on a message board after this, post the responses on a message board after this meeting. Oh, I just saw one in the chat too about potentially needing to change their email address. So we've encountered that a couple of times, that if you've used Basecamp in the past for maybe a different role or a different organization, or if you need to be assigned sort of a different email address as you're logging into Basecamp, that's totally fine. Just email. I'll put the info@ email in the chat, and then and let us know what email you prefer to use. It's super easy. We can go in and change that and then send you a new login permission. All right. So the next thing I wanted to briefly review before turning it over to Amy to add some sort of higher level context is this sort of game board that we've created that articulates the process that we're all going through over the next few months. And if you start at sort of the start column where the game begins, you can see that we've had an open house, we've had the kickoff meeting, and we'll be able to zoom in on. We're going to send this out in Basecamp so that we can see some of the smaller language too. But the next section really talks about how we've been developing shared language together, the visions and the vision statement, the values, the principles, that we're establishing guidelines. So really thinking about how we're going to collaborate with each other, how we're going to decide on what is prioritized on the early childhood agenda. So really articulating what that process is going to look like. And then as sort of some of the feedback from our last meeting, we've also been developing working group descriptions over the past week. So really thinking about these as very specific vision statements for each of the different working groups that articulate what we are trying to achieve within each of the working groups. Then you can see that we had our next meeting on Tuesday, October 25th. And during that meeting, we really began the process of identifying large issue areas within early childhood. So we sort of continued the conversation that we began at our kickoff meeting, where we asked everyone in breakout rooms to consider to share what about the early childhood system is keeping you up at night. So really thinking about what are those top 5 things that are just constantly nagging at you, the things that are the biggest challenges within our early childhood system. So we began that process on group maps. We continued it on the 9:30 call, at night through Basecamp, asking for more participants to add to the discussions on each of the group maps, to brainstorm what some of those challenges may be. And one thing I also wanted to address is that during this meeting, all of the working groups are meeting simultaneously. So we really ask you to sort of commit to one of the meetings, one of the working group meetings, and to join that every time that you're joining the early childhood agenda. But in terms of participation, we fully welcome and encourage participation across all 5 of the working groups in the remote setting. So on Basecamp and through the activity instructions that we send out. So if you are here today and you're going to be joining the high quality experiences working group, but you really want to provide input for the healthy beginnings one as an example, you can feel free to do that at any other point over the next few weeks. And to check over that message board, we're going to provide sort of a summary of what we've discussed today, and to make sure that that your input is encouraged, is involved on that message board as well. So you can see the You Are Here sort of tab, which is where we are today. And at the rest of the meetings, we're going to continue to move that along this board so that you can see where we are in this process. So right now we are at working group session number 2 on November 10th, and we're really going to be focusing on narrowing in on the issues. So we're going to sort of continue the conversation that we began 2 weeks ago, and we're going to work to identify 5 priority issues within each of our working groups. We're doing that because over the next sort of 2 weeks before our next meeting, we're really going to be sharing a facilitation guide and resources with you all so that you can do outreach to your own networks. So really wanting to have something that's quick and easy that allows you to have a conversation with those you are connected with, and to share opportunities for feedback for them so that we can get feedback on every step of this process. So not just waiting until the solutions section, but sort of getting feedback on what some of these issues are as well. So we'll be sharing that next week so that you can see the facilitation guide, which has instructions for how to engage with other partners who may not be involved in every step of this process. Looking forward a little bit, so what we have coming up, just as a preview, is we've really been focusing on identifying the priority issue areas over the past couple of meetings. And we're going to transition to incorporating in the relationship between those issues, those priority issues, and research questions and data. So for each priority issue, really thinking about what are the accompanying research questions that we may have as an early childhood community related to that issue, and then what are the data needs that we have as well, so that we can share that information from each working group with our data team, who will begin meeting in mid-November as well. We're also going to begin to pull together resources related to each priority issue area. So to start to coordinate with partners who may have expertise in different areas, and to pull together research documents, briefings, anything that that is helpful information for us all to consider, best practices that we can incorporate into this process over the next few weeks. We also really want to start to coordinate with partners who are doing advocacy work that is aligned with the priority issue areas. So as soon as we have those identified, we can start to do some significant outreach to the partners who are doing work in those spaces and make sure that we are establishing those strong feedback loops between the partners who are already doing advocacy work in the space and the agenda items that we're starting to develop by highlighting issue areas. We're also going to begin stewardship team nominations. So you might remember that we mentioned the stewardship team at the kickoff meeting in the open house. So this is really meant to serve as a sort of strategy group. We wanted this to be a sort of a process that all of the working groups are engaged in. So what we're going to ask you all to do is we're going to identify 2 organizations from each of the working groups, as well as a few additional representatives that have specific either content knowledge or a advocacy are doing advocacy work that is aligned with the priority issues that we've identified. So we really want to have that strong connection between the issues that we're identifying and what we will eventually include on the early childhood agenda, and the organizations who are doing work in that space who are moving the advocacy conversation forward. So really thinking about sort of that action step or that next step after we do file the agenda. Our next, so the next meeting will be a full group meeting. We won't be breaking out into working groups. We're going to, the meeting on November 22nd is really going to be about sharing across what's happening across all 5 working groups and aligning the different issue areas that we've identified together. The meeting on December 6th will be a working group meeting. So that'll be our final one where we will break out into working groups and we'll work to identify solutions that are paired with the issues that we've identified. And then again, that's where we will really ask for everyone's assistance with outreach, and we'll be providing a second facilitation guide at that point so that you can engage your networks and help us get feedback on the proposed solutions that have been identified through this process. And then our final meeting is on Tuesday, November 20th or December 20th. And that's where we're really going to work to align the solutions across all 5 working groups into agenda items that highlight priorities for key investment, lead advocates, and strategy. So whether it's something that's going to need to happen in the legislature, something that will happen with sort of changing regulations in state government, increased investment, whatever it is. So we hope this is helpful for you all. If there are any sort of thoughts or questions about this document, please throw them in the chat. We'll be sharing this over Basecamp so that you have access to this. And as I mentioned, we'll share this document every meeting so that you can see sort of where we are in the process. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Amy.
Marissa, before it goes there, I think the question that is on everyone's mind is who gets the Scottish Terrier and who gets the thimble?
So funny you say that, because the first iteration of this had race cars for everyone. So we had each of the working groups was 5 different race cars. Maybe we should reincorporate that so that everyone can choose their racer.
I'm a thimble guy myself.
There you go. Shannon wants a car.
There you go. Maybe we'll
Thanks
do
so
that.
much, Marissa and Mo and Jenna for this creation of this beautiful visual to really help guide us where we're going. I just wanted to share a few reflections and as we set the context for today and where we're sitting right now in history. Someone reminded me that with the incoming Healy administration, we will have worked with 4 different governors in Massachusetts at Strategies for Children. We have worked with many commissioners, many speakers of the House, many Senate presidents. And the one thing that is true throughout all these different leadership changes is people who are elected want solutions. They need information, they need us to set the scene, they need us to tell them what's happening on the ground, but they always come back and say, what do you want to do about it? And we see this early childhood agenda, the partnership, the process, and the product as a way to have an answer when people say, what are the solutions? One observation that we've had over the past few weeks is that so many of us are securely rooted in early education and care. And while we know that is an essential component of this, we also want to look up and look around and see the other parts of the work that we need to incorporate here around health, around housing, around food insecurity, around early intervention, around all the pieces that we know matter for young children and families to build this strong foundation, no matter where you are in the system, no matter what kind of setting your young child is in, or how you interact with all these different systems. And we are relying on you, your expertise, your lived experience, your connections, your observations to help us fill in the blanks. We have tried to model a transparent process that we are open for feedback. We have been so blown away by the Basecamp conversations. We also know, and I have often said, our history in this work, collective ours, is both our greatest strength and our greatest challenge. And I would just ask you to put that hat on today. How can we use this, our history, our experience in these systems, as our greatest strength to get towards solutions? So we thought it would be helpful just to set the context to have Mo and Marissa just tell us a little bit more about what this looks like going forward. So Mo, I'll turn it over to you, and excited to hear the conversation. And then we will go to our our work groups. Thank
Good stuff. Thank you. Thank you, Amy. And those of you who are used to hearing Amy on the 9:30 call know that this work has many, many connections throughout the state. And it's been a real challenge and also a privilege to be a part of for folks for such a long time. Thankful to the people who have remained and engaged and the people who are engaging now. So Marissa, I just want to ask you a little bit about like, where do you see this going forward? Like, where are we in the work? And then we'll talk a little bit about why this is so important to connect to our roots in this work. So where do you see it going?
Thanks, Mo. Yeah, so this actually came up during I'm doing the high quality experiences working group, and we had a really fascinating conversation during the last meeting where one of the partners posed a question and said, sort of was questioning one of the guidelines, which says, is this something that's feasible within the next 2 years? And was saying like, there's a couple things that we had identified as issue areas that for sure were not feasible within the next 2 years. They were large sort of things that we really aspire to within the early childhood system, but not something we could accomplish within 2 years. And we had a discussion about it and really wanted to just emphasize for everyone that this process, sort of establishing these relationships between all of us and going through this early childhood agenda process together is a pilot in a lot of ways. It's the first time that we've done this. We're seeing if this works, and we want to have this be a value add to the early childhood system. And so a big part of that was narrowing our focus enough so that we could accomplish something concrete. So I saw one of the sort of one words in the cloud was like, it's not actionable. And I think that that is really what we're trying to transition into now, is to get to things that are actionable. So over the next couple of weeks, we're really going to be working closely with partners to make the connection between what we've identified as priority issue areas for each of the working groups and the partners who are doing work in those spaces already, because we know that many of you are actively developing advocacy agendas that are considering pieces of legislation that have deep relationships with state government and may have recommendations for regulation change or things like that. So that's going to be really the next phase of this, that after we've established what those issue areas are, to really make that concrete connection to what's already happening in the space right now and how we can learn from each other, that we can sort of, as Amy said, to look up and sort of see who's filing bills, what are the bills, what is something that we can collaborate on, that we can maybe deepen based on the response of the early childhood agenda, and to establish those feedback loops so that as everyone is strengthening those pieces of legislation or those sort of action items over the next couple months, that we have this strong feedback loop between the early childhood agenda and those products.
Yeah, Marissa, you brought it up, and then Amy also brought up this idea of really building on what has happened, but also aligning with what is happening. Can you just say a little bit more about that aligning and really working with and connecting with the things that are already afloat?
Yeah, definitely. So I think a big part of this is to align with what's already happening, that we know that, I mean, honestly, in reflecting upon even just my working groups agenda items, it's hard to vote on one because all of them are important and we know that all of them have an impact on children and families. So what we're really going to be trying to do through this is to prioritize the things that are moving now, that will have a significant and a strong impact on children and families, that we know are actionable within 2 years, so that we can have some concrete wins and see what this process looks like when we all sort of come together as an early childhood community to push something forward. The only other thing I'll add to that is that there's the process where each of us individually are developing what those action items are. And I think it'll be really interesting to see how, when we come together, how we can really have that strong feedback loop so that each of us are sort of individually learning from the early childhood agenda, that we might say, hey, there was something that was brought up during our working group meeting that we maybe weren't considering adding to this piece of legislation, but after hearing the conversation, that's clearly a need. Let's think about how we can develop that further. That those sort of partnerships that we're hoping will develop from this process can be a really strong asset for everyone as well.
Thank you, Marissa. Really appreciate that framing. I think it's really important as we go into these working groups that we are thinking about what we're building on and what's already going forward. So speaking of going forward, we're going to go next into our working groups. I'm going to ask our working group facilitators to go and join their sessions. They're going to go ahead and get into their sessions, and then we are going to go into our sessions of choice. Now, for those of you who were not here the last time, or if this is your first meeting, we have 5 working groups. One, and Lex, don't put the links in just yet. One is financially secure families. One is high quality experiences. One is thriving early childhood workforce. One is robust system infrastructure and local partnerships. And one is healthy beginnings. And so you can join one of those working groups. And as was mentioned before, you can always go into Basecamp if you want to add comments to or see what the other working groups have already worked on. Again, I just want to make sure that our working group facilitators have had a chance to go and join their work group so that when folks are ready to go, they are already there. And looks like we have. So I'm going to ask Lex if we could put the link for the first working group, which is the financially secure families. We could put that in the chat, financially secure families. So if you want to join that group, you can click on the link there, or you can copy the link and put it into your browser, and then you'll get a little pop-up that says, leave this meeting and join that one. So you can do that. So that's our first working group, financially secure families. Lex, let's put high quality experiences in the chat. High quality experiences, that is the next working group. If you want to join that working group, you can click on the link or copy the link and put it in your browser, and you'll get a little pop-up that says, leave this meeting and join that one. Those are our first 2. The third working group is Thriving Early Childhood Workforce. Thriving Early Childhood Workforce, that's in the link now. If you want to join that working group, you can click on that one or copy and paste it into your browser. I see some folks have made their choices and are starting to get to their working groups. Next is our Robust Systems Infrastructure and Local Partnerships working group. And of course, if you want to join this one, you can click on that link or copy and paste it into your browser. You'll get that message to leave this meeting and join that one. Last but not least is our Healthy Beginnings work group. If you want to join that one, you can click on that link, or you can copy and paste it into your browser, and I'll give folks a chance to join their groups, and then we'll do a little bit of troubleshooting anybody who is trying to join. Kim,